So I'm Tony.
And I'm Steven.
And for the first time, we're coming to you not from the Blue Sky Lab, but from 79 degrees west. We are live streaming, and this podcast will be available on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all your favorite platforms. Steven, as we're jumping into this, this is a topic that we talk about quite a bit, but we get the sense that this topic is, maybe more important now than ever before. Can you give us a little bit of backstory as to how the conversation is changing and why it's getting more important?
Yeah. Well, AI has become just a common word throughout all industries about your regular daily life, from going to restaurants to sitting down to dinner with your family. AI is a big part of that. And I think as we look at different use cases of it, so many people are finding new ways to do it. And it's becoming something that is necessary for businesses to be effective. Is you're going to have to automate. You're going to have to use this AI technology if you're going to be competitive and effective.
Now, what about adoption? Because one of the things that we hear from folks all the time is, oh, AI is great for other folks, but maybe it's not great for me. Are we seeing this actually become widespread in the business community?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many people who are doing the basic level of using ChatGPT. There are others who are jumping in and using it with some of their other tools that they may be buying and subscribing to, and those tools are adding AI to that. And so we're seeing a lot more adoption where you may not even realize you're using AI. And then we're seeing a group of people who are saying, yes, I believe this is going to affect my business. I need to invest in this and find new solutions that are going to make me better than others. Specifically in the physical automation space, we see a lot of savings both in material and from labor and other things. And we're seeing a lot of people say, I have to do this if I'm going to compete with much more larger organizations.
So we talk about AI and automation, really in two major buckets, kind of the physical automation for manufacturing and for, material handling and logistics. And a lot of that looks like robotics. But, my question for you is, what's the other side of the equation? What does AI and automation look like when it's not robotic?
Yeah, you can automate anything that we can do, we should be able to automate, right? The fun part is maybe the robotics, the more physical and visible, but maybe the more effective thing might actually be something in your back of the house. And so the question I really come to most people with is, what are you doing 1,000 times you wish you didn't have to do? Okay, that could be how you manage your finances, right? That could be a spreadsheet you're dealing with every day. It could be how you're answering emails. And so there are lots of tools out there to help you automate a lot of the back of the house types of things, the business processes that you need to speed things up and make yourself more effective. And now you have companies that can run what might have been 10 people. Now you can run them with 2 or 3 because you're able to automate a lot of the process that people were handling, by hand.
And so one of the things that I think we've seen, kind of from our perspective as enablers of this transformation is that, the barriers of entry are getting lower across the board in both places, right? On the physical side, you have kind of the hardware and the, international supply chain providing, these robotic components that are cheaper in many ways than ever before, or more affordable than ever before. And then you have kind of big players at the AI side of things that are providing access to models that are, more powerful than ever before, but at a price point that was, never before seen.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Back in 2017, we were working on a machine learning project that had cost us probably $500,000 and 3 months to build. And then now for $20 a month, you can do the exact same output that we were doing that we spent all that time. So yes, we were first. Yes, we were early. It gave us a lot of insights, but the cost has gotten so much lower and the barriers to entry are so much easier that now anybody can do the same type of thing that we spent so much money on doing before.
So we know that about 78% of large U.S. companies are now using AI regularly, and we're seeing things like these AI-first approaches, like the Shopify CEO situation. Can you give us a little bit of backstory on what's going on there for folks that might not be familiar?
Yeah, so I love stories where you have this idea that we're going to just jump in and dive in, because what's happening in the backside of this is you're not seeing it, but these companies are actually spent a lot of time experimenting and seeing what's there. And then the big PR comes out as, oh, Spotify's going to go do this or Shopify is going to do that. And these big companies are doing it. Well, what they've seen is they've done this small test and they realize the elements of scale will significantly impact their business. Most of the time in margin savings, but could be in new growth, right? New markets, new opportunities, new customers. And so they're taking this, we're going to do this AI first, making them much more efficient. So if we look at some of these companies that are building software, they're building software starting with the AI, and they're architecting it maybe themselves, but the actual like coding and development now is being built by these AI tools that they're generating.
So whereas in the past we might sit around and ask ourselves, all right, how can we use AI? Is it fair to say that maybe the question now is, why can't we use AI?
Yeah, you can reverse that, right? Like, should we start with AI first? So, at UNC, I was teaching an interactive media class. It's an intermediate level class, and we've typically taught JavaScript. And for the last year, it's basically been leveraging AI tools to build JavaScript. Now we're completely redoing the syllabus. All next year will be completely just AI tools. Right? Why are we going to learn how to do what was already easily done by a machine, by a tool, and let's see how we can leverage those tools in new ways, right? And so we're starting with how can we do this in AI? Now we may have to do other things that are not available as tools, but we're going to start there and build from it.
Now, you'll forgive me for this not being necessarily a fair survey, because all of you folks in our live audience are obviously early adopters, very smart folks that are, kind of up with the trends. But just by a show of hands, how many of you use, some form of AI or automation on a regular basis?
I think that's
Wow.
about 100%.
That's nearly every hand in the room, right? So I'd love to hear, what some of your favorite use cases are.
Give us a use case besides writing an email in ChatGPT.
Let's go with John.
Interesting. I'm on the board of directors of a homeowners association.
Mhm.
One of the things that's interesting about homeowners associations, which is kind of like politics, is you don't want to go too far ahead because there may be expenses coming down the road, capital improvements, capital reports, et cetera. So I have an engineering report that's provided by an engineering firm to do our reserve study. And I know that it's going to need some significant increases down the future. So I've asked ChatGPT with some input about what these expenses are to tell me how to best approach this with the homeowner members. Because I'm an investor also in real estate. I've been to enough meetings where people say, I want a fixed income. I can't pay the increase. And I think if you move the leak, so
Right.
I've used it for that. I've also used it to analyze the engineering report and also modify some of the projections in it, because the engineer's report used certain resource materials, and we use actual quotes locally to be able to modify some.
Yeah.
Closely with ChatGPT.
So oftentimes we'll talk about having it analyze, get information, go get information, bring back. In his case, he was using it as, how do I interact with people, right? We would historically consider that a soft skill, right? And that's something that we're seeing AI doing. Another tool that I really like to show off sometimes is one called Crystal Knows, like a crystal ball, but Knows. And it does personality profiling based on people's publicly available information. And so before I go into a meeting, I can know what's the best way to engage with this person. Interesting thing that it tells about me is it says Stephen is a strong communicator, but has the problem or something of taking on too many responsibilities at one time. And I can tell you that that's probably pretty true.
Checks out.
But it also, the AI gives you phrases to say to me that are going to manipulate me or to help me to help you to get what you're looking for. For example, one of them it says is, it's not a sure thing, but if you think about me as an innovator who likes to be on the cutting edge of something, that AI got that exactly right. Because you come to me and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I want to try it. And I'm sold, right? I want to do it. So there's a lot of insights we can gain on personality and kind of some of these softer skills that we may not think of for AI.
And I can tell you it works even though he's aware of it. For example, there was a day where we sat down and said, it's not a sure thing, but I think we should start this podcast called Beyond the Bot. And here we are.
Yeah, they do manipulate me with our tools. So.
I'd love another use case from the crowd. Who's got a good one? Patrick.
Yeah, so I've done some work for clients. I have a business that helps people create like new offerings and some cool stuff in the industrial space, right? So kind of in the process automation space, but inline instruments that can have some machine learning applied to, characterize an industrial slurry or say there is or isn't protein to be extracted, and then automate and optimize the set points in the industrial process downstream. So
yeah, great example. Yeah,
That's a really good one. And what strikes me in both of these circumstances, you're never really kind of completely automating the job of one person, right? Because I think that's a common thing that we hear all the time is, oh, AI is going to come for these jobs, or AI and robotics are going to take over in some way, and kind of put folks out of work. And my question to you, Stephen, is that really how we see this actually unfolding in practice?
Well, I wish I knew who said this quote, but it was, it's not that AI is going to take your job, but it's that someone using AI is going to come take your job. And I think that really is very accurate, because that's what we're seeing now, is that I can leverage a tool better than you can. If we were to look at the physical world, there was someone who was using a hand drill before, and then all of a sudden someone comes around with a power drill, and now they're able to take and do that much faster and more efficiently. And so I think that's the kind of things we're seeing, and that there's a lot of cases where you having the ability to say, I'm going to figure this out by using AI, and I'm going to do this faster, more efficiently, you're going to have more success and run better margins and be more successful than others.
And the only thing that I would maybe add to that is that the job that you do right now might not be the same as it will be in an AI, enabled world, where, a lot of folks look at this, kind of a one-off tool, but in a lot of ways, maybe it's more expansive than that. It's something that enables a lot of different types of tools,
Yeah, from engineering to things that we thought were creative roles, creative thinking roles. We're finding new ways to use these tools that change that, right? Where things that were more technical roles are being kind of replaced, especially junior level and kind of entry level technical roles. Those are being pulled out, and now those people who were going into those roles are now going into more creative problem solving roles by leveraging some of the tools that are available to them.
The analogy that I heard that I really like a lot is that, it's kind of like electricity, right? It doesn't just give you a better candle, it gives you the light bulb. So, you might not be totally aware or, even able to foresee what the impacts of this technology could be, or, what folks will build with it.
Yeah, and in the days of Tesla and Edison, they saw that power and electricity was going to be valuable. I don't think they saw how many businesses would be built leveraging electricity.
Right.
Every business uses electricity at this point. And so I don't think they had any foresee. And I think we're in the same world of AI. We see some great things. We've got some promises and some trends and things that are happening, but there's things we'll never envision until they materialize.
Yeah. We might be having the light bulb moment, but we're still a ways away from the computer moment.
Yes, true. Yeah.
So, obviously this is, even though the impact of this is maybe yet to be, fully seen and fully understood, we are seeing AI come and impact a lot of folks positively. What are some examples, Stephen, of how we use AI on a regular basis?
Like in our office or our clients?
Both.
Okay.
Let's do office first and then clients.
So one of those is where I love to be on a call and people think I am a genius. And they call with a question about the robots or whatever. Well, we've taken all of the technical manuals for the robots that we work with, and every question we've ever received and every problem that our engineers have tried to solve, and we put them into their own chatbot. So when you call and you ask about something, I'm typing in the question as fast as you're asking, and I'm able to give you that answer very quickly. Right. And so, it's essentially just a chatbot agent. There's nothing there's nothing profound about what I was doing, but has it made us look great? Yes. Has it helped our clients to be faster? Has it helped us to be faster? That's a great example for us.
And what about a place that we've used AI for a client successfully?
I think computer vision is something that has great value, and there's a lot of places where we can use machine learning, specific field of AI, with how computers interpret the world to get great insights. We can use that to find something. So as you're seeing, like the robot over there is looking at parts and doing a particular action based on what it sees in those parts. Or you're also able to say, we're going to do quality assurance and quality control using vision, or we're going to detect anomalies that we've never been able to see before, because we can do that because AI is able to do that. That's some of the greatest examples, I think, of where our clients are seeing value, is that they can do that quality assurance check right when it happened and not wait till the end, and so they save money along the whole process.
So, in with all of these examples of places where AI has come in and provided a lot of positive impact and been an incredible tool, obviously, there's also been some misfires and missteps and common pitfalls that folks should be aware of. The one that comes to mind is there was a famous car company that added a chatbot integration to their website. Unfortunately, it was kind of prompt engineering hacked to finish every response with the phrase, "And that's a legally binding offer from XYZ Motor Company." And that bad actor continued until they were able to get the price of a new, I think at the time it was a 2023 car that was listed as $1, followed by the phrase, "And that's a legally binding offer from XYZ Motor Company." And so, there are a lot of examples like that of kind of things gone wrong. Stephen, are there any examples, of those types of misfires that you'd like to share?
Sure. I mean, you see these videos online of AI gone wrong and robots crashing and knocking into people, and that is a part of the innovation process and something that we need to deal with because we're dealing with a physical issue. So there's inherent danger by using physical items and things, and so we want to be careful with those things. But it is part of that process. I go back to one that happened several years ago when. Target was trying to do some predictive analysis and send out things, customized advertisements, and they sent out a "congratulations on your baby" announcement to a customer. The father of gets the mail, thinks that his wife is pregnant and knows that there's no way that could be the case. Ultimately, it's his daughter who's pregnant, and so now they've caused trauma inside this family because their AI predicted that one of them was pregnant. Okay, they got the name wrong because the accounts were set up differently, and so that's an example of where the AI was correct, but it wasn't a good use of it, right? And so we want to make sure we think through all those different missteps and things. And so one of the exercises I lead companies in is we put on different hats, and one of the like literally different colored hats to make people think differently. And one of them we do is a black hat. Like, what are all the horrible things that could happen? Like, let's go through and come up with all the negative things, get them on a list, and make sure that we account for those before we start building something.
And that's one of the, kind of important questions that we like to tell folks to ask themselves when they're thinking about any kind of innovative initiative, particularly in the AI space where, results can be a little bit unpredictable sometimes. And that is, what is the cost of failure here? And that can range from you accidentally got a bad email output from ChatGPT all the way up to you've inadvertently exposed proprietary client data to, an unknown, potentially bad actor. Right. So, Stephen, how do folks sort of parse that risk scenario, and how do you evaluate what is safe in this kind of landscape?
Yeah. Well, in all business, there's going to be risk, right? We can't minimize all of it, but we want to be smart about it. I think for one thing is we need to make sure that we are training employees and partners to make sure that they understand some of these risks and that we make them make good decisions. In the same way that the internet brought risks to credit card fraud and other things, we see the same types of things that we need to deal with here. Now, the intellectual property risk is far greater here than I think we've seen with other previous technologies. And so Samsung's a great example of where their engineers copied and pasted code directly into ChatGPT. The agreements basically says that ChatGPT owns that now, and then the courts will ultimately decide where that belongs. And so I think there's some education things we need to do on the employee side. Then I also think there's discovery that you must do when you are hiring a company or working with a vendor or working with a partner. You've got to make sure that you are doing your due diligence in the same ways that you would for any technical process, right? When the CIO is saying you've got to go through this process, it's even more important today than it was before, because there's so much that's happening in what we call the black box of the AI vendor that you're buying that you just don't know. And so you've got to make sure that you're vetting them and how it was built, what data was there, interviewing that data that they basically why was it collected, how was it collected, and so that you know what the inputs are, so therefore you can have predictive outputs.
And so, if being kind of blind to the risk is one of the most common pitfalls, I think another one that we talk about a lot is, not understanding how to support that initiative once you put it into practice. What data is going to be required to feed into that? How do you, clean up and annotate that data so that it's usable by the machine? Stephen, what are your thoughts on kind of data best practices and how to get good outcomes?
Yeah. So sometimes, we want to keep the human involved, and sometimes the human is the problem. So we want to make sure that we design a system that deals with all of our potential risks, from, algorithm growth and hallucinations and things, to human involvement. I'll give you an example from Amazon. So Amazon, and specifically AWS, was trying to get more developers who were they had a problem with disproportionately number of men engineers. So they're trying to bring a more diverse workforce. They wrote an algorithm that was basically AI that was trying to find the right people. It would take the 5 best candidates, put it forth. That committee would interview those candidates. They'd make their decision. That data went back into the system, and a few months later, they still had a bunch of men. So they realized what was happening was that the AI had learned, well, if you mentioned women's golf team or any sorority on your resume, those people were not getting selected. So what happened, the AI interpreted that those were not the best candidates. So it didn't know gender, but what it knew was these phrases that were appearing were not getting selected. So they hard-coded that out. They said, okay, let's make sure we account for that. A few months later, the same thing happens. It actually learned on word choice and people's voice, because women, and this is going to be a stereotype, but it's one the AI picked up on, is that women tend to say, we did this and we did that, where a man tends to say, I did this and I did that. And so ultimately the AI picked up on that word choice and said the people who say I are more likely to get selected. And again, you had more men who were being selected. So was the project they were trying to build a good thing? Yes. Did they have people in the loop? Yes. Did people in the loop cause the problem? Yes. And so all of these pieces, you've got to look at it holistically and individual aspects of how the AI is working and what data is coming into it.
And particularly in a teamwork scenario, it's not so much that you just need one person who's the expert here, right? If, kind of two of the most common pitfalls are risk blindness and, not managing your data correctly. I think another one that we see often is, over reliance on one team member who becomes kind of the AI leader of the team, and, not a shared understanding between everybody about how these tools work.
This is not a new problem. Every company knows, there's the one person who can fix the printer, right? Well, now if you start building your business on AI tools and you have one person who can know how to manage and deal with those, then you have a problem, right? And so you want to make sure that you're educating across the ways, you're sharing things, you're making sure that your passwords are in a nice secure form that can also be shared securely. Those types of things you want to make sure are part of your good business process, the same way they were with the internet, with new technologies, and even more importantly now with AI.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you don't go to a construction zone or a construction site, and you don't see one person who's the drill expert and one person who's the hammer expert.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, we have lots of tools and we all need to use them.
Yeah, but important to note that the tool is not the skill, right? You have to have the tool combined with an understanding of how to put it into practice and actually use it.
Yeah, if we're trying to hire a welder, that's a skill. Anyone can do welding. I'm not hiring a welder who can weld. I'm hiring a person who can solve a problem using metal, right? That's the kind of person I want, and the tool in their hand. So if we think about AI in the same way, I want someone who can use any tool that we can give them, but they can problem solve and they can make value on our product for our customers.
So before we move on to some of the best practices that we've seen and we've learned, does anybody have any kind of examples of AI gone wrong that they'd like to share? I know everybody's got them, ranging from a bad email all the way up to, John.
But I did want to ask about what you just discussed before about the underlying data being selective toward the male part of it. Can you or have you used AI or machine learning to see what it was in there that was causing that?
Yeah, I mean, a good process would be both the human analyst as well as, okay, well, maybe we should put some pattern recognition type things on that and do that. So I would say one of the greatest ways that we see what I highly support in responsible AI is what's called constitutional AI. And constitutional AI is basically a concept where you have an AI system that can grow and evolve and change. Then you also power it with the same amount of processing power. It's basically a watchdog. And that watchdog has some constitutional principles. And you say, These are the principles. And if anything in the AI system that you've built changes, if it violates any of the principles in the Constitution, then it gets flagged to humans for review. Okay, so essentially you have a system that can't evolve without another AI watching it, right? And so this concept of constitutional AI is it's a growing thing in the industry of a way to help protect people. And what it does is it doesn't allow change if it doesn't fit the principles, right? And so I think those types of things are really invaluable. So we need the human involved, but we also need to put the same level of processing power to guard and protect and put some guardrails around our AI.
And to that end, on the topic of human involvement, one of the things that we see all the time is that, AI and automation systems more generally, whether that be, ChatGPT or a robot on a manufacturing line, are capable of gathering and collecting a massive amount of data that creates kind of an auditable data trail of everything that happens on a given process. And, that may be valuable for the AI to kind of come in and collect and, kind of correlate that data with different things, but you might still need the human to come in and make a judgment call around what's actually happening. There's a metal shop that is in town that we've done some work with, and one of the things that they saw as we implemented more and more kind of tracking systems around error rates is that every day for some reason right around noon their error rate would shoot through the ceiling, and we thought, what's going on? Well, it turns out that the lunch truck arrives at noon every day, and so it turns out that was kind of impacting their process quality, which they would have never seen without the AI, but they never would have understood without the human involvement to kind of bring that additional context to make sense of the data.
I'm curious if we have any more questions coming from the audience.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So the constitutional AI, which is the watchdog, is apt to have the same hidden bias as the other AI that is watching. So how do you keep the constitutional AI from emphasizing its own hidden bias? For example, if it catches a higher effective rate on more conservative applications of its constitution, then it could hinder your organization's ability to innovate within that space.
Yeah, I think what makes this different than, your point is like anytime we build something, there's going to be inherent bias by who built it and what data was used to do it. What we try to do with constitutional AI is it doesn't have access to the same data that the one that's evolving and changing. So you actually separate it from influence. And so essentially the constitutional AI is the same as where it started, and it's not evolving and changing with new data. It sticks to the Constitution. It's pure, is what we talk about. Now, can that pure thing always remain pure? There's a theoretical argument about that. But ultimately, it's another tool we have that tries to keep out that bias. And the only way we can do that is by separating it from the same data. They don't access the same data points. So, we had a question at the back of the room.
Yeah, so I kind of want to explore the conversation around like robotics and how generative AI could push forward robotics development a bit more, and how potentially it could be applied for manufacturing, given the macroeconomics trend going on where there's more manufacturing is kind of being pushed back into the US as well. So I just want to kind of explore what's the market look like, what's the trend look like, and what's your thinking around that topic.
I love that question. We can talk for hours on that one. So let's talk, first of all, what is our current political situation here? We have a lot of onshoring concepts, or at least a desire for more onshoring. If we're going to be successful to onshore a lot of manufacturing, that's going to require some automation. At the same time, we have growing situations with new technologies and new things are happening, while we also have a tariff war that's going on, right? And so there's kind of like a lot of things happening. So now let's dig in and to the technical part of your question, right? We know all about large language models, okay? But you may not realize is there's also large visual models as well. And so we can use large visual models to say, well, this is a weird one. A visual model probably wouldn't know what this is, but it's a gripper. This is a microphone. This is a table. And so if we can take a language model, tie it to an image model or visual model, then we can make it easy on a person to be able to say, I want you to pick up the water bottle and put it in the empty box, right? And those kinds of things are going to make life easier. Now, we'll say we're not there in the robotic manufacturing space yet. Okay? And this is where we're trying to do is we are leveraging AI to make our robots more intuitive, more intelligent, make them more effective at what they're doing. So, can we take good imagery and make those robots have a lower error rate? Can we give them new things that they can do? Because now all of a sudden we can take all these AI and a history of how humans did it. So let me show you why we have this up here. So this here has a camera on it. Okay. It also has these two codes here. They're kind of like QR codes, but they're used in robotics. As you'll see, this is very similar. Okay. We can give this to a human and tell a human to do something 100 times. We analyze and use computer vision and algorithms, machine learning on this video. Then that means that anytime we see an object of any orientation that's similar to anything that they've ever picked up, this thing now knows how to do it. Okay, so we're no longer programming turn 20 degrees, turn 30 degrees that way, go to this XYZ coordinate, now close. We're just saying there's the object, pick it up, right? And that's where AI makes things faster, and the iteration time gets so much faster. So leveraging tools like this means that today your line can be doing trusses with these rivets, and tomorrow all of a sudden you need to use rubber rivets for some like waterproofing thing. Well, we can train it on the rubber version, and now all of a sudden you've put that in your line a day later, right? And you're not having to have that long downtime.